One day I was crossing the street with my bike on the way back from campus, and there was a car stopped at the traffic light. The driver yelled out the window asking if I wanted to party with them. I ignored it and kept walking down the street. After walking for about 2 blocks, the car passed me, made 3 turns, then stopped on the side of the road to intercept me. The driver then got out of the car along with another man from the passenger seat. They asked for my name and again if I wanted to party with them. They were drinking, apparently celebrating their friend's birthday who was drunk in the back seat. They persisted with me, so I ended up going to the party with them. It lasted for a while with him repeatedly asking and me refusing. It clearly didn't need to last long, but my initial feeling was to keep it as calm as possible because I had already had a lot to drink, and I knew more than anyone that drunk people can be really unpredictable, and things can turn bad very quickly if I started to get too aggressive. I managed to distance myself from them when a car came behind them, honking at them to move. It was a one-way residential street, and the car couldn't turn around because there were cars coming. So I walked down an alley while they figured out the road situation, hoping I would lose them. My student housing was at the end of the street, so I didn't want them to see where I lived. I was almost home, and I was pretty sure I had lost them. But soon after I started walking up the stairs to my place, I heard the sound of a car engine behind me, revving towards me. And of course, it was the same people who had just harassed me. "Hey, where are you going?" the driver said. "Parties like this." I quickly opened the door and slammed it shut and locked it. Fortunately and ironically, there was actually a police officer sitting across the street witnessing everything that had just happened. He pulled the driver over and started questioning him. The driver ended up getting arrested for driving under the influence, and the other 2 people in the car were free to go. I told the officer everything, and that they had all harassed me. I also thanked him for his help. I just hoped they wouldn't come back, and I also hoped they wouldn't remember where I lived. I didn't live alone, so that was always a good thing because we all know there's safety in numbers. But it didn't stop me from sleeping less because of my anxiety about this whole ordeal. The story is about my ex-boyfriend who started stalking me after we broke up. I feel uncomfortable disclosing his name for safety reasons. We had been friends for quite some time before we started dating, back in my first year of high school. After we started dating, it didn't take long for him to show his true colors. It felt like a 360-degree turn. He was someone entirely different, not the good guy everyone knew. He constantly checked my phone every day, seeming like he wanted to snatch it from my hands and read all my private stuff due to his own insecurity. I never gave him any reason to worry about such things. I was always honest and faithful. I had wanted out of the relationship since it began. Every time I tried to end things, he would make me feel guilty and tell me he would change. He would even lie to me about going to therapy and taking prescribed medication for his anger issues. It was a constant cycle of manipulative behavior from him. He would continuously accuse me of cheating the next day or sometimes even hours after telling me he would change. He would curse at me, call me names, threaten suicide, and even physically threaten me on separate occasions. He didn't use drugs as far as I knew, and honestly, we were never that close in our relationship, so I didn't know what triggered him to act like that or why. I thought it would finally be over in my senior year. I was done with him. I finally decided to break up with him as I thought it would make everything better. Much better. I thought he was crazy at the time, but oh my. I didn't even know humans could be this evil. I changed my phone number and moved 45 minutes away with my friend to a new apartment we shared. I felt hopeful and happy to finally be far away from him. Yet within days, he would suddenly show up at places I was, like the theater, tennis court, and restaurants we had never visited before. He would always try to talk to me, but I would always leave immediately, telling him I was busy. He would get angry when he saw me with other men, no matter who it was. It could be my cousin, and he would still lose his mind. I didn't know how he knew where I was at the time. It was truly terrifying, but he swore it was a coincidence a few months later. I moved to a college about an hour away. I thought it would all be over by now, but in my freshman year, one of our close friends who we shared committed suicide, so I went home to attend the funeral. Of course, he was there too. I had no choice but to be nice to him and professional while we were there. After the funeral, everyone would go to another friend's house to gather and reunite. I didn't want to go, but my friends convinced me otherwise. Throughout the time I was there, my ex tried to talk to me. I would be polite, but I would try to avoid him. He was by my side all night, trying to kiss me, hug me, and anything he could. Someone at the party even asked me if we were back together, and of course, the whole room looked and immediately turned towards us. I said no, of course not, and he immediately got my number from someone at the party and started sending me messages, calling, texting, leaving voicemails with the same sad stories all the time. This went on for 5 years. I finally moved out of state, and I stopped talking to everyone in my hometown, except for a few select people whom I trusted wholeheartedly. The phone calls finally stopped, hopefully forever. I still feel anxious every time I go back to my hometown, worried about meeting him again. I'm after a guy named Steve on Tinder. I wasn't looking for anything serious like dating or such. Maybe just friends. I guess, I don't know, I was just bored, that's it. I thought you seemed cool because we had similar interests in fashion, music, and other stuff. I started talking to him, and just after a few hours, he got my Snapchat and started messaging me there. He began asking if I wanted to hang out later that night. I didn't reply for maybe 30 minutes or more, and that's when he started sending me several messages at once without any response from me. First, he sent me a question mark, and then 15 minutes later, he sent another message saying hi with a question mark. I don't like it when people do that, and it gives off a red flag to me, especially if it's someone you've never met before online. I then started ignoring him because it made me a bit uncomfortable with my past experiences when a guy does that. And he was someone you've never met before. Very needy and sometimes controlling, so I distanced myself and didn't think too much about it. I was walking my dog in the nearby park, which I usually do a few times a week. I live in an apartment, so I want to make sure he gets proper exercise. We took a break on this bench where I sat for a few minutes just enjoying the view and relaxing in the bright spring weather, appreciating nature for a moment. Maybe after 10 minutes of sitting there, a random guy started running towards me. "Emily, hey you, it's me, Steve. I just wanted to know what you're planning. Nice to meet you." "Coincidentally, we just met each other," he said. Yeah, I said, with a worried expression on my face. I started panicking because I knew something wasn't right. It didn't feel like a coincidence. It didn't take long before I realized that he wasn't even the guy in the photo. He had catfished me, which immediately sent shivers down my spine, and I knew I was in trouble. Then I remembered I had my Snapchat location turned on for all my friends. I forgot that I turned it on months ago to test something, and I forgot to turn it off again. Turns out this guy was actually stalking me. He slowly started harassing me more and more, because he knew I was getting more frustrated and uninterested in him. And while he initially asked me by asking if I still wanted to hang out, I eventually told him to leave me alone, and he scared me. It didn't take long before he started yelling at me. Honestly, I was scared, shocked, and at this point, I was in fight or flight mode. My dog started barking at him in an attempt to protect me. He backed off a bit, but continued to harass me with his words. He started saying some really disgusting things that I don't even care to share now. Know that they were truly inappropriate and awful things you shouldn't say to someone. Thankfully, an older man who was jogging realized I was being harassed, and he scared him off. I'm so grateful to that man because I don't know what else would have happened if someone hadn't intervened. The guy left, and I never heard from him since, and I clearly blocked him in every way. I'm still uneasy, and sometimes I worry I'll run into him when I'm alone or something. Please be careful who you talk to online. This could happen anywhere and anytime. There are weird people everywhere.